Welcome to the International Online Conference, Creating Stability Within Uncertainty, Flexibility, Surrender, Presence, and Initiative. We have here with us today Professor Patricia Jennings. Patricia is a professor of education with the Curry School of Education and Human Development at the University of Virginia. She is an internationally recognized leader in the fields of social and emotional learning and mindfulness in education. Her research places a specific emphasis on teacher stress and how it impacts the social and emotional context of the classroom. She's the author of numerous peer-reviewed journal articles and chapters and several books. And I also want to emphasize that Patricia, that likes to be called Tish, is a unique scholar in that she's a teacher. She was a teacher and teacher educator for many years before she became a researcher. In that sense, Tish really knows the challenges that teachers face from her own experience. So thank you so much for joining us, Tish. This is such a pleasure.
It's great to be here, Aviva. I think what you're doing is amazing.
So my first question to you is, can you tell us a little bit about the COVID in your country? What happened? What are the main challenges for the education systems? How do you cope?
It's been particularly difficult here in the United States in that there's been a real lack of leadership at the federal level. And so a lot of states have been having to try to figure things out for themselves, and some states have been doing better than others. There's also been some confusion and denial around the actual pandemic itself, so that it's creating confusion. And so some places people are wearing masks and trying to be safe, and other places people think it's a hoax and aren't doing anything. So this makes it really hard on schools because they can't trust that the people that are coming to the schools, whether it's the students or the teachers, whoever, are going to be able to keep things safe. So there was a big movement to open the schools, which usually start around now, or between now and middle of September is usually when most schools start. And as the time has gotten closer, there's been spikes in a lot of parts of the United States. And so all of a sudden, schools that were planning to open either on a hybrid way, like 2 days a week, 1 day a week, or something like that, all of a sudden are not opening, which is causing a lot of confusion and a lot of challenges for everybody, teachers, parents, everyone. I do have to say that I've been very impressed with how educators have responded to the challenge. All of us who've had to shift really quickly into online learning did an amazing job of trying to get as much pulled together quickly in order to do that. One of the biggest challenges I hear from the teachers that I know is that here in the United States, a lot of our students are falling through the cracks. They're being lost. We don't know how to reach them. And the teachers who are trying to reach the students and can't are very, very upset by this because they worry about them. They don't know if they're homeless. They don't know if they're just not, there's maybe no adult at home that's making sure they log on. Maybe they don't have a computer. Maybe they don't have any Wi-Fi. Some of them rely on schools for food. So some of the schools are actually delivering food to kids and their families, but that's a huge task. And then other schools are actually the parents or the families come to the school and pick up the food. And that's one way to connect with them too. But then there are, I don't know, depending on the location, sometimes up to 20% of the kids that they don't know where they are. And that's really frightening.
So this COVID situation is also creating some opportunity, this uncertainty. And I want to ask you, those educators that make use of this opportunity, what are the qualities that help them make use of this opportunity?
Well, one of the schools in our local area here that I think was well prepared for this because of the way they teach and the way, and I think the way they teach is really the way we have to move to, is they're very student-centered and they're project-based. And they're a charter school, which in the United States, it has the freedom and flexibility to do things differently than the norm, but they are a public school. So the students don't have to pay money or anything to go to this school, or the parents. The students are given the autonomy to learn what they need to learn in the way that they want to learn. So the standards are laid out for them. They know what they have to learn if they're, and this is a middle school, high school, so it goes from ages 12 to 17. And the students are told, this is what you need to know in 7th grade. But the student gets to choose how they want to learn that and how they want to demonstrate that they've learned it. So it gives students agency and mastery over their own learning. So they're not as dependent on the teacher to actually present information to them. They are given the tools to discover and learn independently. So this ability to learn independently, to know what you need to learn, and then to know how to learn what you need to learn. There's so many reasons why that's important today, but when you are faced with a situation we are right now, where we can't rely on an old structure that requires an adult disseminating knowledge to students, whether it be virtually or in person, students need to understand that they are the masters of their own learning, and that we all are at any age. And for us to confront these kinds of crazy challenges like COVID or all the other future things that we have to look forward to, crises, being able to learn independently and have the capacity to learn by yourself on your own or in a group, in a team, is really what we need. That's the other thing about this school, is it's project-based. So not only do the students get to decide how they want to learn something, they work together in a team to solve something or learn about something. For example, because climate is one of those things that is facing us, the climate change, they decided, this one class that I observed wanted to think about different ways that they might address climate. And they came up with about 20 different projects that groups of 3, 4 to 5 students got together and worked on. And the day I was there, they were presenting their projects to climate researchers at the university to tell them what they were doing. And they got feedback from them, from people who actually study climate change. And these kids were so empowered because they got to see how little things could make a difference in a bigger picture. For example, one group decided that they wanted to compost all the food at school instead of just throwing it away. So they set up a whole composting situation at school, and they got all the students to compost their old food or their leftover food. And then they created a worm farm where they were growing worms, or they were feeding the worms with the food. And then they were also learning about what happens to food when it decays and decomposes. And then they also learned about all the nutrition that comes out of that can feed plants. And so the whole learning around climate is a lot bigger than just climate. There's all the science, the biology, all those other things that they were learning, and they were so engaged and excited. And you could see them, the little lights going off in their head when they were talking to the scientists about how important what they were doing is. And they felt so empowered. And you could see that kind of learning, that kind of way of discovering is what we need today.
So from what I hear, you give a lot of emphasis to the initiative, the autonomy of the students in this process. And my next question is, the title of this conference is Flexibility, Surrender, Presence, and Initiative. So you gave some time to talk about initiative. Can you say something about one of the others, or maybe all the others? Quality.
Yeah, I love these qualities. I think they're beautiful. So when I think about myself as a teacher, being present with my students and really seeing who they are and really responding to them as individuals, rather than sometimes when I'm not present and I'm in my head about how I'm supposed to be or how they're supposed to be, or I have some previous thoughts about the way school is supposed to be, and I'm projecting that on what's happening, rather than being present in this moment with this person. For that kind of learning to happen, the adults need to be fully present, so they open space and create opportunities for students to take initiative. So, and in that sense, there's also the surrender is involved in it, because it requires trust and faith that kids will learn independently. I think that is one of those mindsets that really has to shift, because there is a tendency for us in our culture to think that kids require being forced to learn something or made to learn something or coerced into learning something, when learning is a natural human process that we need to trust. So being present to that and surrendering to this feeling that we have to be in control or be in power over in some way. And then there's one that, the flexibility.
Yeah.
Flexibility. So, I mean, that to me comes with that whole story, is the flexibility to see and to be open to all kinds of possibilities. Right now, we need all the possibilities we can get, and keeping our minds open to those possibilities and considering them in a flexible way is really what makes us adaptable and resilient and much better at coping with challenges like this today.
I also want to ask you about your new book that is called Teacher Burnout Turnaround, Strategies for Empowered Teachers. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking me about that. So over the last, since I started working in mindfulness in education and really trying to help teachers and students manage the stress of school environments, it became more and more clear to me that the school environments themselves are structurally stressful, and that mindfulness can help a little bit, but it can't change the structures that are being imposed on students and teachers. And so for a long time, I've been thinking about, well, how can we change this structure, this system that seems so oppressive for so many years? And in my thinking about it and working through these understandings of where we've come to, it dawned on me that really the way to do this is to empower teachers. For many, many years in the United States, we've been trying to reform education from the top down. We've tried to impose different kinds of standards, impose different kinds of regulations, and every time that a new one comes out, it puts more pressure on the people in the schools, the students, the teachers. And it's usually not very responsive to the needs of the situation at all. And so I started thinking about how teachers might learn to empower themselves in this context so that they can take the initiative and make the changes they see would be beneficial to themselves and to their students. So the book outlines how we got to where we are, why it's the way it is, and then it looks at different sort of points in the system or places in the system where teachers do have leverage to make these shifts. One of the problems with educators, at least in the United States, is that in many ways we have a sort of learned helplessness in a way, because of the way the school system evolved in the United States. teachers have been disempowered for many, many, many years from the beginning. And actually the history of this in the United States is interesting, because when schools started to scale up and they started teaching masses of children, they looked to the factory as a model for how to scale. They didn't know what else to do. They had no science to base any of this on. And so they created this very rigid system that compartmentalizes and standardizes things in ways that don't really make any sense anymore. At the same time, they didn't have enough teachers, and so they decided to engage educated women to create a workforce. But at the time, women were not really part of the workforce. So it was also seen as a way to save money, because they could pay women a third of what they were paying men. So the whole system has an embedded sexist structure in it that disempowers teachers intentionally from the beginning. And so helping teachers see that history and see that we're in a new era, this is not untenable, that way of thinking anymore. And giving teachers this understanding to empower themselves and start to see now that they do have leverage and they do have power that they can use. And I think these qualities that you're talking about here, this ability to be flexible, surrendering, being present with what's happening, and taking initiative, are all key dimensions of what I talk about in empowering teachers to find ways to shift things from the inside out. So I am hopeful, especially given the fact that with COVID, everything in a way has been shaken up. Our structures are shaken up. They aren't functioning right now. So it is an opportunity, a door in a way, to rethink how we're doing things. And at the same time, in the United States, we're having a teacher shortage. So that gives teachers some extra leverage, a little bit more power if they understand what to do with it. So my book, in a way, is a manual for teachers to see how they can empower themselves and to take some of the initiative to make some of these changes that we know will help our students. I think if you really want to change education, I think the teachers are the ones that know how to do this.
Wow, that was really inspiring, really aligned with the theme of this conference. And now we can show the details of your website and your other books here. And I really want to thank you for your time and this interview. It has been very inspiring. Thank you.
It's really my pleasure. And I wish all of you the best in moving on to this new world that we're creating together.